In this episode of the Real Sales Manager podcast, it was a huge pleasure to discuss with Andrew Smyth, an experienced and super successful sales leader, a wide range of sales management topics and especially the often very tricky issue of leaders having direct customer relationships. Andrew discusses the characteristics that make for an effective sales manager, including listening, the many forms of active engagement, and recognition of team members. And he emphasises the importance of understanding customers' perspectives, effective communication, and the need for visibility in leadership roles. We discussed lots of other issues, and Andrew concludes with some really powerful messages for sales leaders at all levels. Be brave, be bold, be authentic, and be kind. Enjoy. Andrew, thanks ever so much for coming on the podcast. Look, I'm really looking forward to this session. You've got tremendous experience, so I'm really looking forward to your insights, your perspectives. We'll talk about quite a number of things, but can I start? My standard first question is always, can you just explain to us kind of your journey, how you got here, particularly how you got into sales management, and maybe why you got into sales management as well?
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be here tonight. I appreciate you inviting me along. So look, my journey started as a tradesperson. So I completed school and went on and became an apprentice carpenter and got my carpentry and joinery apprenticeship, and always thought I'd be a builder. There was never a vision of sales or otherwise. It was very hands-on. However, along my way, I found an opportunity that was presented by a construction material company that asked if I would consider coming to work for them. And to be honest, my response was, what would you want me to do? I'm a carpenter, been a supervisor, construction manager, general manager of a building company. What have I got to
Okay.
do with sales? And they pretty quickly explained that I've been selling all my life to get those contractors to come along
Right.
and work for us, to get suppliers to want to partner with us around product trials and whatnot, that I had been
Okay.
selling all my life. So then to understand what part of sales to go in and what could that open up. And it was really good that the chap, his name was Shane Brady, really laid out a bit of a pathway that, Andrew, if you went here, this and this. And through my journey, I've been fortunate to be involved in scaling up startups and also transforming businesses that might have got themselves in challenging positions through changes of technology within the product or evolution of that business and whatnot. So I've been very fortunate
Right.
to come through as sales manager roles, general manager roles, and commercial leader roles that I probably would never have dreamt about when I was an apprentice carpenter, to be fair, Steve.
Yeah, that sounds quite a journey, and um, I have to say it's not a normal journey. If I put that in that way, yeah, a lot of people don't get that grounding in in a trade through an apprenticeship, and go straight into, I don't know, internal sales or something like
Well,
that. Do you think that background, your initial background, what are the advantages, and are there any disadvantages to taking that route?
yeah, so look, I think I've been on the positive side, really blessed to be honest. I've had the opportunity to be a customer and feel what it feels like to be a customer. Um,
Yeah.
I've also had the opportunity to learn to partner with those suppliers because, again, as a construction manager, even into my first general manager role, I was still at a young age, still learning, and a lot of those suppliers taught me a
Yeah.
lot. We did a lot of trials with suppliers of different products they were developing and whatnot. So I think most of all,
Yeah.
I was really blessed to have had the experience to feel what it feels like to be a customer.
Okay. Yeah, which is gives you a unique perspective, particularly in the industries you're looking at. Okay. And I mean, you say you're blessed, but you clearly have some natural talents that lend themselves to moving into sales and to moving into management. So you went into management before you went into sales, is that right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
You've got,
I was fortunate to
yeah,
lead people, and again, I got the opportunity to lead people who were employed by the company. but also contractors who
Okay.
work for the company. So there's two very different leadership mechanisms needed in there for somebody that I guess works for the business and someone who chooses to come and work to do a short-term contract like brick up a house or put a roof on.
Oh, okay. Listen, we might come back to that because we'll talk about leadership as we get into this. Um, okay. So one of my standard questions is, what are the characteristics or attributes that you look for in sales managers? And I guess it's turning it back on yourself as well. What are those characteristics that you have or had? I'm sure you've developed them that helps you to move into management and into sales.
Yeah, I think they're always work in progress, and you can't forget where you've come from because, as a lot of people have
Yeah.
said, sometimes on your way up, it happens pretty quickly, but you always come back to your roots somewhere. But probably the three really
Okay.
big characteristics that I could suggest to anybody going into their first sales management role is listen and involve others in the decisions. I think that's really, really important that people don't just get told
Okay.
what to do. There's that input where the team has some input into what it looks like. So I think listening is an amazing skill for a new sales manager, sales leader, because sometimes there is a pressure that you think you've got to know all the answers because you're in that role now. But of course, none of us do. I think that's my first one. The second one is be visible. So now that you're a sales manager, you still need to be visible. You don't have to be out in the field as much as your people, but if there's a tough meeting or someone needs something, it's good for you to be seen. You don't have to do everything, but just be visible. And then most of all, again, I think is
Yeah.
set the example. So as a sales leader, if there's certain expectations you've got of your people, make sure you can live
Hmm.
them and act them when nobody else is watching. And I think if you can get that one right,
Oh,
you can then lead your people because it's authentic, it's real, it's not just when people are watching.
oh, okay. That's a nice way of putting it. Yes. So when nobody else is watching. Okay. Can I just come back on this thing about being visible? Is that to your people, to your management, to your customers? What,
Yeah, I think
in what way?
I think it's a bit of all of that, but certainly with your people, you need to be visible. You can't, particularly, and I think it was Helen a couple of episodes ago you had there, particularly when people come
Hmm.
from being a peer. So if someone was a salesperson beside a salesperson, and now they become their
Yeah.
manager, they've got to be very careful they don't become a different person. Obviously, they've got different role and different
Yeah.
responsibilities, but they can't suddenly sit behind a desk and send 100 emails a day and 40 Teams chats and text messages and bark out
Yeah.
orders.
Yeah.
They still
Yeah.
need to be that real person that gets out, and particularly if there's a challenging situation, to be out
Yeah.
with the people, to have the opportunity to go out and still be coachable, but also coach the people while they're on the road with the people. I think it's really important
Yeah.
that a sales manager, when they first go into it, doesn't become a different person because they might sit with a different circle of people now. Their seat might have changed in the office from where it was to where it is.
Yeah.
They might always
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
busy in busy meetings because of their new role when the people that report to them aren't looking for the manager to be absent because they're at a busy meeting that they don't know what it is. That they're looking to be able to
Sure.
connect with that, especially in that first 30, 60 days.
Oh, okay. That's interesting because, I work with a lot of new sales managers and they do find that difficult that all of a sudden they seem to have different expectations on them. They're called into all these management meetings. They get information that they weren't privy to previously. So, and they feel people are looking at them. They're being regarded. So it's particularly that first period, which is that's really insightful. But you have to be yourself, and you have to appear to be yourself to others as well.
You do.
Do you think it?
Sorry, Steve.
Sorry.
If you think about it, the people who promoted you into that role, if it's been a promotion internally or appointed you, appointed you to the role because of who you are. Now, obviously, one of the
Right.
difficulties is you're now getting into that role And maybe in your head, you think you need to be someone else because you look at one of your peers that might have been that for a lot longer than you. Obviously, the trap is to stop being who you are and lose that authenticity that helped you get to where you are. Which then, if you want people to follow you, how do you expect them to follow you if you stop being who you were?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Do you think this whole? I mean, it fascinates me, this whole area about being visible. Um, do you think it's easier or more difficult these days? Because I see two trends. Clearly, following COVID, so much of what we do is virtual, and I think you can build relationships virtually, but it's more difficult.
Mm.
Rather than being side by side and having a cup of tea or coffee with people actually in the field. And secondly, and I don't know if you've seen this, many of the organizations I talk to are really heavily into CRM, yeah, electronic systems. AI is now coming in, and all that's great, and it gives us lots of information. But it does kind of encourage managers to sit behind the screen and look at the data all day long rather than talk to their people. Is that something you see, and how have you countered that, or not? I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Look, I think I'm going to call that the trap. I think that's a trap that we can be so
Okay.
internal looking, making sure everything looks perfect for our managers or our manager's manager in regard to what we think they want. But ultimately,
Yeah, yeah,
what they want is happy staff, happy customers who deliver a high performing result. So at the end of the day, if we keep that in perspective, around
yeah,
CRMs, I'm very, very clear on that. If we want salespeople to put things into a CRM, let's make sure we're really clear in what they get back in exchange. Because if they don't get anything back in
yeah,
exchange, where's the value for the salesperson? And it doesn't matter
yeah.
what organization you're in, there's something that you can give back with that data back to the salespeople that's relevant to them.
Yeah,
So there is that to the side of your question, visible as in side by side having a coffee versus across a video call. I think it's a balance. I think the first thing is the team need to be able to engage their manager. So whether it's accessibility on the phone, response to, because
yeah,
everyone communicates different. Some people love a text message or WhatsApp. That's okay as long as you respond timely to
yeah,
them. Because if you don't, they feel like you're dodging. Through
yeah,
virtual,
yeah,
that some people now coming into the workforce, that they know digital and video calls so well that for them that's a level of normality. But obviously you
yeah,
can't beat being together. But geographic space here in Australia, it's a long way from top to bottom. You don't get the opportunity to be together
yeah,
all of the time. So I think it's a matter of using
yeah.
the best of the medians to be visible and engaged and connected to your people.
Sure, sure. Okay, but the clear message is, yeah, to keep communicating with your people so that there's that ongoing relationship.
Yes.
Um, can can I come back to you on this? Because you mentioned up front experience of managing employees versus contractors, and you said there's a big difference. Uh, can you just expand on that a little bit? Because that would be a new concept to many sales managers.
Yeah, it is, and it's a really good grounding because obviously the people that I guess you're going to pay every week or whatever the pay cycle is, but let's say every week,
Yeah,
you can ask those people to come from where they are to a room to be in a meeting, or you can say that we're going to do it this way today or whatnot. Where there's a
yeah,
contractor, typically a contractor is paid this amount of money to do this piece of work, and as
right.
long as they do it in the time frame with the right materials to the right specification, from there on in, you've not really got a lot of direct authority across those people. That
Oh,
you've
okay.
engaged them to come and provide you a service. However,
Yeah,
however, the best relationships with those contractors is where there is that level of informal leadership, where you're not necessarily telling them what the next move is, but you're possibly
yeah,
looking 3 steps ahead because some of these, particularly smaller contractors, that they're working hard to make a dollar for their family, and
sure.
while they're there, they're all focused on what they're doing. That they're not always the best at planning. So some of the contractors
Yeah,
over the journey I've dealt with from 20, 25 years ago, I'm still friends with now because I appreciated the fact that sometimes you're looking 2 or 3 steps ahead of where they're up to, to make sure
Yeah.
they could work at a nice pace. But you couldn't tell them that, hey, you're not thinking straight or you need this because they were a business, they were a contractor. So it was great grounding around leadership
Yeah.
was that informal leadership versus, I guess, a bit more formal leadership through a hierarchical matrix that people are used to.
Yeah. But clearly, I mean, all the signals I get is that that informal style of leadership is much more appreciated these days and more effective. That, even treating salespeople as more kind of independent contractors running their own business. And in my experience, good salespeople, don't want that much direction. They want support, they want challenge, but they respond better to that kind of leadership. Is that how you see it? Or
Yeah, it is. It is. I think you've got to remember that a lot of these salespeople are very, very good. They're in autonomous roles. That they're in a car and
yeah,
they're some distance away from an office. And again, with geographies, they might be in an office for a week or more. So they're
yeah,
skilled. They're skilled individuals who know their craft really well. And your point spot on, Steve. The best salespeople aren't looking for instruction. The best salespeople are looking for recognition around the great work they've done, and recognition comes in lots of different ways, obviously, but that's what they look for. And it's how do you guide and keep on course? And I think that informal leadership, servant leadership, is really,
yeah.
really powerful around salespeople, particularly when there's a customer on the other side of all of this exchange.
Oh, okay. What do you mean by that,
Well,
Andrew?
I guess our salespeople are out there, they're working autonomously, but ultimately, they're there pleasing the business the best they can, but they can't please the business if they haven't pleased the customer, because the customer is the one who's going to make the choice of, do I transact with Steve or Andrew? So we need that piece as well, that they've got that autonomy support, that they can really get out and access the customers and get those customers to want to purchase their goods or service.
Okay, you said there that recognition comes in lots of different forms, and yeah, there's lots of research, and we've both been on training courses to show that. But for you, how does that actually play out? What are the most effective forms of recognition that you've found working with salespeople, particularly?
Yep, yep. So look, it comes in lots of ways. I guess the most obvious is around incentives and those sort of things. And the best incentives
Yeah,
have been the ones that are the clearest and simplest for a salesperson to understand. And they can see a scorecard all the time. They know exactly where they are. Because
yeah,
again, some of my favourite encounters with salespeople is where I might ring them just to say hello. I might not be their manager anymore. There's layers between. But they tell
yeah,
me without even being prompted, hey, Andrew, I'm having a really good whatever period, good quarter. I've only got this far to go to achieve my target. They can see the target. They
right.
know what's in it for them. So I think the first one's that financial recognition where they get out and they achieve bonus and hit that.
Okay,
The, the,
yeah,
the next recognition is when they win an order. Now, that order could be the biggest project available. It could be
yeah,
a new product on a shelf. That it could be a new customer they've converted. But I
yeah,
think once you've built that trust and appreciation, where they're happy to actually send you a text message of the order or a phone call or email it
okay,
through, because they know that that's going to actually make your day as well. I'll often say to salespeople and around organisations, can you do me a favour? Because quite often the bad news gets to me. When it's gone wrong, it gets to me to try and get involved. Can you help me as well? Can you share the good news with me? So when you convert that customer or get that order, never feel afraid to send
yeah,
it to me. And it reciprocates. It gives me something really good to go, cool, we're on the right track here. Also, I'm
yeah,
sure it makes that person feel good or they wouldn't have done it.
for
It's
sure.
another form of
Yeah, yeah,
recognition. And then most of all is in front of it,
yeah, yeah,
either the customer or, let's say, the CEO. I think if people
yeah.
feel recognised in that, and that's not by presenting a trophy in front of it, sometimes it's just the words you use and the discussion you have that shows appreciation to their hard work, because a sales role's not easy. Like it's not
No.
an easy role.
Yeah, yeah. It is amazing I mean, doing these podcasts and speaking to senior leaders, so many of them still recall in their journey some odd comment that somebody had made to them. Particularly around, what they did in a deal, or winning something, and these things stick. Even with very senior people, that people recall, I was a rookie salesperson, and my manager at the time said this, that, or the other, and have a tremendous effect. They can't remember how much bonus they earned that quarter,
No.
but they can remember their manager, singling them out for some kind of praise. Okay, amazing. Um, yeah, and that recognition thing around incentives being clear and simple. Again, I think there is a challenge for sales managers in a more complex world with CRM, that we measure everything, and we want to do that, but at the same time, give these highly motivated, autonomous individuals a very clear dashboard for them to work off.
Yes.
Uh, so, Andrew, you talked about customers there, and I know one of your great strengths, as I understand it, an area you're very interested in, is this whole business of the relationship that sales managers, sales leaders have with customers. Because, I guess the primary communication is through the salesperson, but what's your philosophy around the relationships that you as a sales manager, as a sales leader, would have with your customers?
Yeah, look, Steve, it's so important to me. Like, we often look at the owner of a business, that, gee, it must be good. They got all these people work for them, and they got all this property or asset, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
But everybody's got a master. That business owner might have a bank manager that's got some influence in their business, or whatever
yeah,
commitments it might be. And it can be quite lonely. So I think senior people in businesses, so customers within that business at senior level, enjoy seeing senior people from other businesses, because there's conversations that they'll have, and it can help each other. You never know what hard times each other's got, or challenges,
yeah.
and most people are very open to help each other. But as we come to the salespeople in the field, I think it's really important that salespeople have certain parameters that they're aware of. And when I hear people say the customer needs to understand, my skin shrivels up. Like, I just hate hearing that, because a customer doesn't need to understand. A customer's got their business to run, and they've got choices who they
Yep.
transact with, or whatnot. A customer never ever has to be told that they need to understand. But the art is to build that relationship where a customer wants to be interested and wants to engage, and then that professional relationship really starts to blossom, and the trust comes into it.
So you're advocating that as a sales manager, as a sales leader, you can complement the relationships that your salespeople have, particularly talking to more senior managers in the customer. And you seem to be saying it's about building a relationship and building trust. So you're not looking at, helping to sell the product, to be the subject matter expert. It's just, I mean, we used to say, creating that warm blanket for the customer, making them feel good because you're taking an interest. Is that it?
Yeah, it is. As a sales manager, your job's not to go out there and make the sale. You've got salespeople to do that. Otherwise, you may as well not have them. 100%. It's to go out
Yeah.
and show appreciation, show interest in the customer, but also your salesperson. It's an opportunity to recognise their effort by going out there, no matter how well they're going with that customer. It shows that appreciation. And absolutely, I've not met a lot of customers who don't want to talk about their business and their aspiration, and being willing to sit
Yeah,
and
yeah,
listen to that, to me, is just the right thing to do. Where it can all go
yeah,
pear-shaped, absolutely, where the sales manager or leader comes in and takes that autonomy away and tries to do the deal, or where the salesperson might overcompensate, where the sales manager asks the customer a question like, who's their favourite sporting team, and the salesperson is
yeah,
good enough to answer that question for the customer. But that's pretty disempowering for a customer. Like, if you could have that
yeah,
conversation in the car
yeah,
together, not the customer. So a big pet hate for me
yeah,
is when somebody asks a customer a question, and somebody else wants to demonstrate how well they know their customer by answering that question. It doesn't feel good as a customer.
For sure, for sure. I mean, he makes some interesting points there. That point about, particularly for business owners, but I'd say senior leaders, yeah, it is lonely. And I think some salespeople find it difficult to grasp that, as and even as a sales manager, yeah, it's a much lonelier experience than being a salesperson, because you have to make decisions. You've got your boss, you've got your team, you've got maybe colleagues pressurizing you, and it can feel lonely. So to have that relationship, and also I guess to have that safety valve, that if I'm a customer, if I've got a relationship with the sales manager, I've got somebody else I can talk to apart from the salesperson if ever I feel the need to do that.
Yeah.
Um, oh, okay. So it sounds like a lot of the time you go out on what I'd call joint calls with the salesperson. Do you? Presumably you plan those.
Yeah.
How does that work for you with the salesperson?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if I think back to those sales manager days and beyond that, yeah, absolutely. You talk to a salesperson, and quite often for me, it could be that I was in a different state. I'd gone on a plane, I'd been somewhere, and I had the opportunity to then go out with some people. I'd always let
Yeah,
them know that, hey, I've got this period available. I'd love to come out on the road with them. You take
yeah,
me to where you think I can be the most use. So please don't take me to your favorite customer, your most challenging customer. Take me to where you think I can add the most value to you and the relationship you've got
yeah,
with a customer. Because again, we're all wired different. That there's that acknowledgement that some customers will get because the salesperson took
yeah,
Andrew to see them. But there's also that acknowledgement from the salesperson. They might want to show this new stock profile they've got in, and there might also be this customer they've not been able to get a breakthrough with that they think maybe this can help. So that's normally the case. That there's other times when, hey, I'd really like to go out and understand the market a little bit more. Could you take me to a customer that kind of fits this profile? And that could
sure,
be about the segmentation or competitive landscape or product mix or whatnot.
right,
But typically it's one of
yeah,
those two things. But most of all, please take me to where I can be the most value to you because you're giving up some of your time to have me with you.
for sure. Do you ever make calls by yourself without the salesperson there?
Um, yep, there could be occasions where it is to one of their direct customers, but I'd never do that without them being aware. So it could be, for example, hey,
Right.
I'd really like to go out and see so and so because of this, that, and the other. And
Yeah.
geographically, it's just impossible for that person to be there at the same time. I really need to understand something.
Okay.
And then I always report back to them after I've
Yeah.
been there. So I never go and don't give them any feedback. I'll go and say, hey, great, went out and saw Steve at such and such area. And
Yeah.
Steve was good enough to give me a look at this, this, and this, which has told me that, that, and that. But I'd always make sure the salesperson, because again, as a salesperson, if suddenly I've gone and seen their customer, they get no feedback, doubt can creep in your mind very quickly, and you don't want that. That's not the
Yeah.
intent.
Yeah. I think it's another aspect. You use the term servant leadership, which, yeah, I think a lot of people are trying to embrace. But I think it's another aspect of that
Mm.
ultimately the salesperson owns the relationship with the customer. You're there to help them. Clearly, there are things you want as well, like market intelligence and whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's that mindset, isn't it? When you go on those kind of calls, I mean, I guess joint calls all by yourself, because you're a senior leader, are there any topics that you see as being off limits? Are there any areas you kind of steer clear of?
Um, Look, obviously, there's certain topics that yeah, absolutely, you want to be very respectful of. There's certain governance and law around, so obviously
Yeah,
there's certain intelligence that'll be inside someone's computer.
yeah,
To me, that's off limit. To go in and demand to see certain things or expect to see them. To me, that's just off limit. Outside of that, I think if you're respectful to the people and the customer you're with, the conversation will lead to where people are comfortable to go with that. To go with the
yeah, yeah,
conversation. And if you keep that within a sensible framework, um, it's
yeah,
okay. But I think there's also the important bit to remember that it's a professional relationship and there is a line where if you cross that line, it becomes very difficult to do good business together because you can
Yeah.
feel certain ways, but there's nothing wrong with knowing someone. Well, I encourage people to know Steve well enough to know a little bit about his family, not everything about his family, but enough
Yeah, yeah,
about that next time you
for
go,
sure.
you can ask a question that is appropriate.
Yeah, yeah, because we all operate in a context. Um, okay, I mean, so a lot of that is, good salesmanship. Being aware of these kind of things. Um, can it go wrong? What are some of the pitfalls that you see as a manager or leader going out to see customers either by yourself or with salespeople?
Yeah, look, going it by yourself, it certainly can, because a customer can tell you something that might be exactly the same in their eyes as what they're telling the salesperson, but the way you absorb the
Yeah,
context of could be slightly different. And your response, that
right.
can bring down a whole lot of work. Someone could have been working with this customer for 3 months, bring them on a journey. You go out
Yeah,
for the customer, they've said the same thing they've been saying, but you interpret it slightly different because you're in a rush or you're thinking or it's a different level.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And you make a
yeah, yeah,
response that can undo a whole lot of work of the customer. So there is that bit. And then I think the other bit when you go out with the customer is there's certain decisions and calls you might be more experienced in or have more authority to make, and you make that call on the spot. Again,
yeah,
that can undermine that salesperson versus be able to make a signal to the salesperson or come away from that and say to the
yeah,
salesperson, "Hey, look, I want you to ring back this afternoon," and let the customer know that we can do this or that or the other. So I think the biggest risk
right.
is you can disempower your salespeople certainly when you're out there on your own. That can be incredibly damaging. But also out with
Yeah,
them, you can undermine their authority unintentionally very easily.
I see those potential traps as well when you go out to see a customer directly. What about the issues from a salesperson point of view? Because I've had experiences where sometimes the salesperson can almost set you up. Particularly, they might want you to come in to handle the latter stages of a negotiation that really they should be doing, but they sometimes abdicate their responsibility and say, "Okay, I'll bring Steve in, I'll bring Andrew in because it's getting a bit challenging." How do you respond in situations like that?
Yeah,
Oh, I don't know if they occur for you, but
yeah, no, I've been there where their problem becomes my problem, or they'd like to prove a point about why the business might be wrong. And to be honest,
yeah, yeah,
I've probably experienced it in two spots. It's been in the market where we're together. They're trying to prove a point about why something mightn't be a good decision, and it might not be your decision. It could be an
okay,
operational type decision that needs to happen. The other one is in a
yeah,
sales
yeah,
meeting where you come into a sales meeting and between the salespeople and sales manager, there's this diversion of their problem become your problem, and it is a really fine line because you don't want to necessarily walk past it, but obviously calling it out is also a tricky situation, particularly in front of a customer. So um,
yeah,
sometimes it is just about let don't react, but let the conversation flow to hear exactly what it is that we're talking about. And quite often through a conversation, sometimes the salesperson customer will actually talk themselves back out of the topic that they raised because it's
right,
not new and 90% of the other suppliers might already be doing it. It's just
yeah, yeah,
it's just a bit of change that just mightn't be looking for a bit of change. But yeah, that is a challenge, Steve, when yeah, make your problem my problem, and in a
yeah, yeah,
public setting, it's quite complex.
yeah. Some of the viewers and listeners may be familiar with the concept of monkey management. I don't know if you've come across it, Andrew, where people have a monkey sitting on their shoulder and they try and get it to jump onto your shoulder as the manager.
That's it.
And the monkey could be, it's a problem, a challenge, whatever.
Yeah,
And you see these monkeys in meetings, jumping from shoulder to shoulder.
yeah,
That's probably a whole different session we could have on
somewhat.
that, but some people might be familiar with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Uh,
no, somewhat. But yeah, sometimes again, it might be that bigger deal. What's even being discussed in there? It could just be to work through a little bit of process. Again, informal leadership,
yeah.
because with the customer, you're not the customer's leader, but informal leadership
Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
conversation can sometimes help peel that onion back until you get to the point where they actually go, actually, that's a great idea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so you can add value, but you just got to be a little bit
Got to be
careful.
patient.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So how much of your time would you typically spend, or would you expect your sales managers to spend actually, working alongside salespeople in front of customers? Is it, 5%, a little, just a little bit now and again, or is it the majority of time?
Yeah, look at it again, different stages of maturity of where that business unit or team is determine a fair amount of it, but probably customer
Yeah,
facing, like, oh, gee whiz, would you put it down to a certain amount of days a week, or would you put it to percentages? But you'd love to think 20% as a minimum of the time is with their people in the field around customers, because
yeah,
again, it stops people getting stuck in office worrying about all the internal side of things versus what actually matters,
yeah,
and that's the
yeah,
customer and the people in front of the customer. So I think it's really good that they do it. And the other trap is they don't only go out with the salespeople that are like them or they feel best with or most comfortable with. It's make sure you share it with all your salespeople. And some salespeople don't look for that. That they don't necessarily want their manager to come out because they feel a certain
yeah,
way. So that might mean, you know what, that makes sense. You might go a little bit less with that particular customer, but with that sales
yeah, yeah,
rather. But it's all about how you motivate those salespeople
yeah.
is through those interactions.
So one of the issues that quite a number of sales managers tell me about, particularly people who've been promoted from within their team, is that they get resistance. Um, some salespeople are going to welcome them with open arms and say, "Please come, help me, give me feedback, give me coaching, fly the flag for me, help me build trust with the customers." And others um, put up a brick wall and just don't want sales managers near their customers at all.
Mm.
How would you do? I mean, would you just accept that, or how would you deal with that?
Yeah, look, I don't think you could just accept that brick wall, because
Yeah,
again, that's it just takes everything away. So particularly when you come in from being a peer or colleague to become the sales manager, you do need
yeah,
to cast your identity as that sales manager because it will be different to as a colleague, as a salesperson. So you need to cast that identity, and yeah, you do. You need to be subtle because there could be some super experienced salespeople who really are wondering why they didn't get that role and you did, and have all sorts of reasons in their
yeah,
own head why that's happened. Um,
yeah,
you need to work with those people at their pace. And to your question before or comment before, sometimes they can be the one that when you do get in front of a customer, make sure that there's only problems when you get there to deal with. So you've got to be ready for those things and not punish anybody for it. You just need to be there and really open
yeah,
and calm and concise and work your way through it. And hopefully you can get those salespeople over the line, across the line. But at the end of the day, there's also that bit that if they thought, or they got that experience and thought they were there for that role and didn't get it, and they want it so
yeah,
badly, there might be a time that that salesperson needs to be released to go to another opportunity because
yeah,
they've hit that ceiling now. They've hit that mentally, and you can't unstitch that if that's the challenge.
yeah. That's again, we could go into a lot more depth, and it gets very personal specific. But a couple of things you said there was you can't just accept the brick wall. And it's maybe it's a symptom of something else that they're disgruntled because they didn't get the job or whatever. So you have to tackle it somehow. Um, and you also said you have to cast your own identity, which is a lovely phrase, but you have to do that because we talked earlier about being authentic as well. So when you've been promoted, yes, you have to you know cast your identity, but you're still the same person. So that's quite tricky, I think, for new sales managers to navigate that and to do both at the same time.
Yeah,
Uh,
it is. As that really effective a salesperson, you've been an individual contributor. That's your identity is part of the team identity. Obviously, when you become the leader of that team, that the identity that you'd like your team to be known for is your responsibility because everybody is different. Like we're all different. You've got to manage every individual person, every customer differently.
yeah,
But
yeah,
to get that overall identity, that is your responsibility to help knit together all those personalities to do it. And with the brick wall, it is very much that what you walk past you condone. So if you're happy to let one person put a brick wall up, you better be prepared for every person to put a brick wall up because you can't let Steve put one up but expect Andrew can't put one up. That's unreasonable.
okay. What you walk past, you condone. I love that phrase. Um, uh, AI will produce some quotes out of this conversation. Hopefully, it will get that one. If not, I've made a note of it because that's and again, and I know I did it, particularly as a new sales manager. I see people doing it all the time. So many things on your plate that you will almost ignore some of these deep, personality-based issues, particularly in the first 6 months. You'll let people get on with it, and it will come back to haunt you. Um, uh, okay, Andrew, there's lots of stuff coming out here. If I was to summarize, given, I mean, particularly working with customers, but sales management in general, what would be your top, 2 or 3 tips for new sales managers coming into the role?
Yeah, look, I think the very, very first one is don't be afraid to make a mistake. Now the big thing here for a sales manager is when you're a salesperson, you made a mistake, you could clean that up before anybody even saw it because you're out on your own. You're an individual
Yeah,
contributor. Now you're a sales manager. When you make a mistake, be ready. Everybody's going to see it because it just went across the
yeah,
whole
yeah,
team. But remember, if you don't make a mistake, you're not doing anything. It's so different to when we walk down the street to get the paper. Some days we might
yeah,
cross the road because we think we'll get over that intersection quicker, but in actual fact, it was slower. That could be a mistake. So you
okay,
have to make a mistake,
yeah, yeah,
or you're not doing anything. You're practicing that. That would be
yeah,
the first one. The second one, and let's stay on that theme. If there's been a mistake made, own it. Don't 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 sit there and say that it was one of your people, this, that, and the other. You might work with them and coach it, but if a customer, for example, was to ring your sales manager and say, Andrew, your team, they've just messed this up. They're so hopeless. They gave me the wrong price for this and they delivered it to the wrong
yeah,
address. It's easy to say, oh, look, well, yep, I'll work with Steve and we'll sort that out versus own it. Hey, look, we're really sorry that's happened. Let me check into that and come back to
yeah,
you. Be visible. Don't just push it away. And then I think the final one is super, super important. And that's to celebrate success because you've just moved to a sales manager role, which can sound fantastic. You've got a promotion. You might have got a little bit extra money. You've now got people reporting to you, but it can be lonely. So you need to celebrate success. Your team needs to feel like they're recognised for it. And it could be the biggest order the business has ever seen. It could be a big project. It could be a acquisition of a customer. It could be a new stock line. But you should celebrate
yeah,
that. And where you can celebrate it with the team. And where you can also celebrate it with the customer. Like if that customer has just won a project with their contractor and with yourself,
okay,
why not make sure that customer goes, well, this feels good. I want to win again with those people.
yeah,
So I think they're the three things. Don't be afraid to make a mistake or you've done nothing.
yeah,
If there's a
yeah,
mistake made, own it. Don't put your team under a bus. Just people respect you
yeah,
more because you own it. And
yeah,
celebrate the success. And celebrate the success doesn't mean anything silly. It could be as simple as an email that goes across the whole thing that
sure,
says, hey, fantastic, have a look at this. This is what we've been working on for the last 3 months together. We just got our first win. Well done, Steve. Could be that simple.
yeah, yeah,
Or it could be,
uh,
you know what, we need to go and have dinner. This is big.
yeah, yeah, but um, yeah, often we get caught up, I think, in the big incentive programs and stuff like that, and we spend hours in meetings. but it's often those little things, the little email. Again, recounting what other people have told me, just a thank you when you pass somebody in the corridor or whatever. Great order, thank you. That goes just so far.
So far,
It's amazing.
I remember early days in the organisation, and I was an early sales manager, and our general manager at the time, we hit a target, and we didn't hit them often at that point. It was a turnaround business. We hit a target, and it was a
Yeah,
warm day, and on the way back from somewhere, pull over here, we need to go into the shop. We went into a shop, and I think, what is this? And we went back to the office, and we had 4 boxes of ice creams from the supermarket. And that got brought out to say, "Hey, everybody, that's so good we hit that target. Well done."
yeah,
Everybody got out of their chair to come and have an ice cream, and everybody spoke and were together
yeah,
and connected. That was probably bigger than $1,000 in a lot of way because it had that emotional
yeah,
connection, and it was a box of icy poles.
yeah,
Like, it wasn't a Rolls
yeah,
Royce, but again, it was that acknowledgement, recognition together as a
yeah.
team.
And you remember that to this day. So,
I
yeah,
remember
that's
people's
amazing.
faces and just that appreciation. It wasn't the
Yeah, yeah,
value, it wasn't the value of the material thing, it was the appreciation that
yeah,
someone, a general manager, had taken the time to actually go somewhere, get that, bring it back, and give it to the people,
yeah, yeah.
was so big to the people.
It's an example. Yeah, I'm a great believer in looking at things that people do that they don't have to do. So just going that extra step and doing stuff you don't have to do has a huge impact on customers, but on your team as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, even if it's just buying some ice cream.
on your team, absolutely,
Yeah,
and even a customer. Yep, you know what? You don't have to, but as sales manager, if you know that customer well enough, even a text message to the customer. I know once upon a time text messages weren't enough, but these days, even a message, "Hey, well done. So pleased that you guys picked up that order. Thanks very much
yeah,
for supporting Steve across that journey." Just things like
yeah,
that is, I think it's so important to connect all those pieces together again because
yeah,
it
yeah,
just help people smile and be happy.
yeah. Okay, amazing. Listen, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. That's okay. And then when we come back, I'll be asking you about your biggest mistake, if you're up for
I hope we've got
for
plenty of time,
talking about
Steve.
that.
Bonus question.
Okay, Andrew. Well, listen, lots of fascinating stuff so far. One area that really always interests me is if we can explore one of your biggest mistakes, because we all learn from our mistakes, and hopefully new managers can learn from other people's mistakes. So, if you're happy to share what was your biggest or one of your biggest mistakes as a sales manager and what you learned from it.
Yeah, look, yep, 100%. As I said before, if you don't make a mistake, you're not having to go, you're just practicing. So I've made some mistakes.
Yeah,
I'd love to say I'm proud of my mistakes. I don't, that's the right word, but I've certainly learned from them. And I'm going to share two. And the first one is probably being too executional. So went into the sales manager role, and sometimes you just wanted to see it get to that finish line. You wanted to have that win, or there's a particular target you're after, and you became too executional,
yeah,
and you got in the trench to make things happen, and in turn disempowered your people because you'd rang that customer
okay,
yourself, or you'd brought that deal together on your own, and the poor salesperson that had been doing all of that hard work in the lead up to it, ultimately,
yeah,
I would sense when I look back, felt a bit useless because I'd been
yeah,
working, then you just helicopter in and do it. So I think
yeah,
my first mistake was too executional, which also took me away from some things I should have been doing that would help support. And then
yeah,
definitely the other one is asking salespeople to do too many things at once. You'd have an idea, you'd send it. Emails are just, they're so quick, they're the best thing. You'd have an idea, you'd send an email. You'd have an idea, you'd send an email.
yeah,
By the end of the day, there could have been 10 different emails went to these poor people that have been in front of customers all day and in traffic all day and trying to do all of these things, and there's 10 requests for things on the one day that probably don't even make any
Right.
sense to the salesperson why they're being asked, and if it did, the email was this long. So that would be my two: being too executional or asking too many things at once.
Okay. I can really identify with those as well. And the interesting thing is, you do those things for the best of reasons. You're trying to win an order or whatever, but and you take over, you disempower people. You're probably doing it for the best of reasons, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's I don't know how you feel, but you have to let your salespeople make mistakes sometimes,
yeah,
or not make mistakes. You may be the best salesperson, but you've got to let them do the job, even if you could have done it slightly better.
yeah. And there's instances, and a lot of them, where they're actually better salespeople than what you are as a sales manager. You
Yeah,
you've just got to work at their pace because they're going to get it done. It just might be 1 minute after when you wanted it done or you thought you could do it. So it is. And I think you get more confident over time as well to be able to talk to your salespeople and work as a team on how you're going to overcome that, where yeah, things can happen. But
yeah,
yeah, they're big ones for me. Big mistakes I've made.
yeah,
Not once,
yeah.
times as well. I was a slow learner on a couple of them.
Okay, no, I get that. And the second one as well. For the best of intent, you've got all these ideas, but it's sometimes you have to, think about it from the salesperson's point of view, and hold off on some stuff. Okay, well, those are great. What about your biggest triumph? What are you most proud of as a sales manager?
So again, I'm going to have to break this into a few pieces. So one is
Okay.
seeing what we touched at the start, either a business scale up or a business turnaround. That they would be
Yeah.
really, really, really big. But if we come back to a sales manager who leads people, so come specifically back to that, I think the
Yeah.
first one is recruiting the people you wanted to recruit, and it worked. So that's a big triumph. So again, remember an organisation where it was a challenge to get anybody to want to come work for that organisation because it was in turnaround. And over time, you got the
Yeah.
people you hoped to get into the organisation. And sometimes they said,
Yeah.
gee whiz, I wish I had come 4 years ago. The second one is when you make a bold move and you move someone from a role to a role. And I've interviewed people for non-sales roles and said to them, hey, what happened if I put you in a sales role tomorrow? And they go, oh, no, that's not what I've done. And down the track, it's the point where they go, actually, can we talk about what you said with that sales role? So that vision to see they might be, but also when things happen in business and there's only two choices, you move someone from a role they're in to a sales role because you believe they can, or unfortunately they
Yeah.
might need to leave the business. And I've got
Yeah.
just the fondest memory of such a great young guy who we moved from one role to another role, did it super, super tough early on. We believed in this person because of their technical knowledge. They just had to learn their craft. And I still say to this
Yeah.
person, when you write your book, please remember to put my name in that book because I know one day you should write a book and I will come work for you.
Really.
It's so pleasing to
Yeah. Yeah.
see when again, about that people, but when you back a person against their own belief in some ways, but they trust you so much that they'll do it, and then they're
Yeah.
nurtured and coached and supported, not necessarily by yourself, by other people that might be better at it or closer to the person that can give them the right attention. But when you see that starting to
Yeah.
come together, oh, Steve, it makes it worth it. Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
anybody can hit a target and number if they choose to. Is can you do it with it?
Yeah. 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 And what a super story. And we all work for different reasons and we want money, but it's the satisfaction of helping people to actually change their lives. And I've had this discussion on a number of episodes of the podcast. If you don't get that as a sales manager, you probably shouldn't be a sales manager.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. I love that phrase, making bold moves. Yeah, you're a manager. You're not an administrator. It's about making decisions and having the courage to do it.
Correct. You're paid to make
Yeah.
decisions. You're no longer an individual contributor. You're a leader of people.
Yes. Yeah. Uh, Andrew, this has been a fantastic discussion. I've really enjoyed it. I've learnt lots. I've written lots down. Any final thoughts that you'd want to share with particularly new sales managers who are the majority of people who listen to this or view it?
Yeah, it is. Look, I think for that aspiring sales manager, and when they get their turn, or they simply get the opportunity to show that intent. There's been a lot of people along the journey that I've actually said to them, you should apply for that. Show the intent. Whether you do or don't get it, it's going to be.
Yeah.
But certainly, if you do, I think there's a couple of B's here: is be brave, be bold, be
Yeah.
authentic. But for me, most of all, be kind. Because if you're kind, you can get the best out of people. You can, if we go back to COVID time, I recall,
Yeah.
again, I'd moved into my first national general manager role, and a matter of weeks into it, we had our first COVID lockdown in Australia. So I'd a sales force nationally totally immobilised. And in Australia, that's not how we do business. So we're immobilised. And what do you do? We took the pressure off the numbers, and we looked at activity, but most of all, we asked our people to ring their customers and check in on how the customers were. And as a consequence of that, in my opinion, when our competitors might have been going, well, we can't do anything, we're at home, we'll watch Netflix, our people were doing that. And as a consequence, they were getting a phone call back to say, hey, I've got this, can you help me? And our business grew. So through kindness, people grow, business can grow, society grows. Just make a brave decision, make a bold decision, stay authentic, but test is it got a level of kindness to it, because you don't have to not be kind to run a good business.
What amazing was be brave, bold, authentic, but be kind. Fantastic final message. Andrew, thank you ever so much.
It's my pleasure, Steve. It's been great to chat this afternoon, and thanks for the great work you do. I enjoy the podcast that you put out as well. I referenced Helen there earlier, and I certainly learn along the way listening to them. So well done on your effort.
Well, it's a great joy doing these, and I have some fantastic guests, including yourself today, which people should learn a lot from. Okay, then, have a great day.
Thanks, Steve.
If you're an aspiring, new, developing, or an experienced sales manager in complex business to business, or you know of someone who is, you may want to go to www.realsalesmanager, that's realsalesmanager, all one word, .com, to learn about our unique blend of training and coaching to help aspiring sales managers to decide if it's right for them and how to go about getting a job, to help new sales managers get as effective as possible, as quickly as possible, and to help developing and experienced sales managers with a personalised program to improve some of their specific skills.